Hey, hello everyone and friends of Unity 13 Spirituality. It's been a long time since I shared the last video about Kabbalah on this channel. However, um, I want to say that the journey toward the self never stops because it's a constant and infinite path. Tonight is September 15, and tomorrow is celebrated in Mexico the holiday for Independence Day. And I want to apologize because maybe we can hear some noise where we are experiencing an electric storm outside, but it's a curious event because there is a say that there is a saying that says the rise prevail even though skies fall, and this is kind of the activity I'm trying to reach tonight because I'll be talking about rights, laws, and freedom. So I want to think that this is the perfect time to do this. So during the time um, of apparent silence, my personal search led me to integrate what I learned in Kabbalah and to other fields where spiritual knowledge becomes practical actions. In other words, I am moving from theory to practice. And in this process, I discovered something as deep and intense as mysticism itself. And I am talking about natural law, its study and application, together with sovereignty of the self and Kabbalah. But to understand natural law, this can be defined as a set of universal, unchanging principles, older and higher than any human legislation. And these principles come from reason and human nature, and they help us recognize what is fair and what is not. From the perspective of Kabbalah, which studies the origin and nature of the universe, so the nature of human soul, these laws and interaction also belong to Kabbalah's field study. And while I was absent from social media, I choose not to speak about this because systems of control usually discourage or silence such reflections. But for me, understanding this and acting on the roots of justice and legitimacy is a necessary step in the journey toward the self. Because for me, represents a moral obligation to share with others this information. And today, in the land where I'm living now, and all around the world, we know humanity is turning into it's turning a point where we are all facing the same problems: corrupt governments, injustice, wars, violence, and an evident lack of respect for human life, dignity, and freedom. And those of us who have reached a certain level of awareness cannot simply we cannot simply say that we are awake or that we all see everything clearly, because through awareness brings a big responsibility, and we must be careful where we put our time and energy, because if we are not aware of that situation where we put our time, energy, and resources, we might end up supporting the very systems we want to move away from. And I am not talking about fighting governments or control systems directly. I am speaking I am speaking of not feeding them with our energy and power. Because in Kabbalah or any other spiritual path, whatever it is, we have realized that we are a fragmentation of the infinite, of the creation, or from God in its highest sense. Then we must also recognize, claim, and live our own divinity and or sovereignty as a woman and as a women or and men. Consequently, it is unacceptable that our divinity and power be controlled by those who claim authority to govern, when actually many of those systems are form of slavery disguised as democracy. But the final impulse to share this message with all of you came last September the 1st, 2025, when I witnessed an indigenous ritual that marked the beginning of a new justice system in what is now called the United Mexican States, or Mexico, if you want to simplify it. And I want to say it with full respect and honor that I deeply value that ceremony. That's my very personal opinion. Because in that ritual, the indigenous communities invoke their ancestral deities and they invoke the universe, recognizing forces higher than any laws written by men. And from that ceremony, I understood that by their own choice, by their own will, the representatives of the indigenous peoples decide to accept a constitutional framework, even though they are autonomous communities guided by their own rules, traditions, and customs. And this shows that all legal systems use symbols and rituals, which means they admit that their authority is not absolute. And those who deny this only reveal their dictatorial nature. And this led us back to the essence of natural law, the recognition that universal principles exist beyond any constitution or legal codes. And these principles are what give legitimacy to all human laws. For this reason, what I'm sharing today can be can also how can I say this? What I'm sharing today can also be seen as a ritual act, a conscious step that has the same moral weight as a solemn oath. At the same time, mentioned that in mentioned that indigenous ceremony is taken as a precedent that legitimizes the right of each person to choose the principles they live by, as long as it not causes no harm to others or to the creation. So today, through this act, I recognize my own divinity, sovereignty, my dignity, and my freedom. And I claim my natural right, and I affirm that no one represents me. I choose in a sovereign, conscious, and responsible way to live under the only eternal divine law, natural law. And no law made by man has authority or jurisdiction over me. But I want to say that natural law is not new. is not a new information. It's very old, and maybe you can see other people, other teachers or messengers who speak about this. And I want to ask you for a favor. If you don't like what I'm saying or the way I'm saying, because uh, it's evident my limitations of the language, my second language with each English. Don't focus on me. Focus on the message, because I think it's very important. I think it's huge and, as I said, intense. But we can see the trace of this information in trace of the great thinkers through history. Only to mention some examples, in the fourth century, St. Augustine talk about the human law is valid only if it reflects justice. And after that, in the century 13, Saint Thomas Aquinas spoke about natural law and said that is the human reasons participation in the eternal law. Um, in the 20th century, Lon Fuller and Ronald Dworkin and John Finnis explored justice, fairness, and universal principles as the inner morality of law. And recently, in the 21st century, Martha Nussbaum and Robert P. George continue to connect natural law with human dignity, rights, and bioethics. Today, many communities and individuals around the world reclaim their status as living men and women, self-determined under the jurisdiction of natural law, standing against formal systems that promote injustice and immorality. And when this, with this introduction, now I'm going to share my manifesto of status as a living, self-determined man, through which I exercise my right to live freely and consciously under natural law, committing myself to live in harmony with the universal principles of justice, respect, and freedom. And I'm going to share the screen. While I'm reading, you can also read. So says, as it says. Okay, I think it's more visible now. Yeah. And I start saying self-declaration, present. Through this writing, born from my current consciousness level, I declare, affirm, and acknowledge that my incarnation in this existence and in this physical plane is a consequence of infinite fragmentation and of divine creation. I fully recognize my living, substantive, aware, pre-state, and pre-legal being inherent to my existence. I acknowledge that the infinite and creative attributes of the Source dwell sovereignly and honorably within this being. I respond to other men and women by the sound of the words Jose Martin, and I was born from Cisneros and Dominguez lineage. I was illuminated and taken from my mother's womb on the day 18 of month of Tammuz of the year 5740. at the geographical location latitude 20.6795 degrees north and longitude minus 103.3254 degrees west, under the one and only natural, universal, eternal, divine law. I acknowledge and honor my name was given to me by my parents along with the teachings, values, and customs of the place and time of my incarnation. However, from a state of revelation, I am aware that my essence transcends all conditioning or limitations, whether territorial, cultural, or imaginary, imposed by others or inherited unconsciously, including those of legal fiction. Therefore, I claim, exercise, and honor my divine, natural, and sovereign right to be, to inhabit this body and interact through this physical vessel with the world and society in a conscious, free, honorable, and full manner, recognizing my sacred nature as a living man. It's my firm will to always act with honor, respect, and under exclusively voluntary agreements. I decree and confirm that no other being, entity, institution, or organization has legitimate authority to define, limit, or confine my being through territory, stereotypes, borders, documents, laws, or regulation that contradicts the universal laws and divine orders that govern my evolution and the expansion of my creative, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual potential being. I firmly state my intention not to delegate my power nor accept structures or imposition without my full consciousness and freely granting consent. I also declare that no silence, omission, or force or unconscious signature can be interpreted as a consent contract or obligation with persons, systems, institutions, or entities that are not aligned with the principle stated here. All consent must be informed, explicit, voluntary, and conscious. I expressly prohibit the use of my name, image, data, creative energy, or any other manifestation of my living being for profit purposes, manipulations, surveillance, coercion, labeling, or control by third parties without my explicit, informed, honest, and honorable consent. I proclaim that all rights remain with me to ask for restitution and compensation whenever my rights are violated. I firmly refuse to feed through my time, energy, labor, or economy any state or parasitic system that uses any kind of resources to support police, armies, weapons, or any other force apparatus that represses, extorts, abuses, or intimidates human beings to preserve interest of institutional, personal, or any other kind of control. Likewise, I refuse to associate or interact actively or passively with individuals and criminal organizations or activities out of natural law in any of their forms. In coherence, I consecrate myself to living freely, sustaining myself through the Oh, through the fruit of my deep, honest, honorable, conscious, and creative work, aligned with what I consider to be my life purpose and my personal, economic, ethical, artistic, and spiritual growth. I walk this path with deep respect for my own divinity, the divine spark of others, and the Creator and the creation. I respect and honor that other people, institutions, or entities choose to abide by systems of laws, traditions, and customs, as long as such systems recognize, respect, and honor life, liberty, and the right to be and to manifest without violating the essence, dignity, and sovereignty of another living being. Likewise, I declare that I abide by the basic premises of natural law, jus naturalis, which establish foundational principles: do good and avoid evil, preserve life, seek truth, and live in society. Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot to read these are foundational principles and the higher purposes, which are living according to reason, art, act virtuously, seek moral and spiritual perfection, and be oriented toward the common good and solidarity, and acknowledge and honor God. These premises are recognized as the foundation and aspiration of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Therefore, they are aligned and are congruent between each other, invoking some of them without excluding the other statements as following. Article 1, inherent dignity and universality. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. This dignity is intrinsic and doesn't depend of any external grant. Article 2 and 7, equality and non-discrimination. All people are equal before the law and entitled to equal rights and freedoms without distinction of race, color, sex, language, religion, political opinion, or any other status. Article 3. Right to life, liberty, and security. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and personal security. Article 4 and 5. Prohibition of slavery and torture. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Article 25. Right to an adequate standard of living. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for health and well-being, including food, clothing, housing, medical care, and necessary social services. Article 18. Freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, awareness, and religion. In all the former statements of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. With all the above stated, I hereby declare finally, with full consciousness, in my peaceful, non-belligerent, and non-aggressive behavior, that I, Jose Martin, from lineage Cisneros and Dominguez, am a living man, incarnated in this physical body, who choose to live, to create, to experience, to learn and to transcend, and not merely to exist. This testimony is hereby made as a sacred, free, and sovereign act, in full union with the infinite source, natural law, and the mystical and universal order that sustains all existence. For the purpose of entering into new contracts and obligations, I shall consent them. I shall consent to them under the terms previously stated here, and they shall only be sealed with my handwriting autograph on this document and accompanied by my fingerprint with my own blood, having my spoken word hold the same contractual value, made and declared freely and voluntarily by my own sovereign will in El Valle de Atemajac, Mexico, August 13, 2025. Signed, Martin Cisneros. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I am here again. I know these words are very dense, very intense, but I know when I was creating this document, uh, I was feeling something inside me very strong with all the knowledge that I've been developing from Kabbalah and spiritual studies. But as a conclusion, I want to say that natural law is not an abstract idea. It's the truth that life, freedom, and dignity come before any written law. And through history, philosophers, jurists, and entire peoples have declared that an unjust or unfair law has no legitimacy. And I want to say that to make public my status as a living man means to give open testimony of my condition as a consciously sovereign, free, and self determined being. And making them public is an act of honor. I mentioned them because there are some other manifestos in my website. I'm going to share in the link in the description of this video. But as I said, is making them public is an act of honor and humility in recognition of myself. For by placing them in a plain sight, I affirm my word and my will under the jurisdiction of natural law. And I claim, in every sense, my pre-legal, pre-estate right before any positive norm or institute authority. So, once visible, this testimony cannot be ignored and gains strength as a living record and as a reminder that dignity, freedom, and human rights are not granted. They are recognized, they are claimed, and they are exercised. Like I said, well, additionally to this manifesto, this and other are publicly displayed on the website. I want to share where is this website. Well, the website I'm gonna share it in the description of this. But here, actually, the saying that what I've just said, I manifested here, so you can see some other. I'm sorry. Yeah, So you can see the all the files. Actually, I'm gonna be uploading more files in this section that they spoke about the same topic. Um, there are some other kind of legal in the jurisdiction of natural law. But if you have time to check out what is in this website, um, I'm gonna be sharing more information and teaching, trying to teach. I'm gonna start a new course. Maybe Kabbalah was not further or deep as I wanted to share, but I want to focus on this information because I think is the application from any spiritual knowledge. Like I said, from theory to practice. And for me, this is a big step because I was afraid and I was doubting to do this. But like I said, it's a moral obligation, and I think this is what I have to do. And I'll be explaining. I will continue explaining this and developing these ideas. And with this in mind, I want to say goodbye, inviting you to follow Unit 13, the journey toward the self, uh, through the share links. And I want to share with you also that as soon as possible, I'm gonna have another website, like a podcast, only in case that YouTube or any other social media um, ban my videos talking about this. So I want to thank you for your time, for your attention, and I hope to see you in the next time. Thank you very much.